Before I begin, let me just tell you there's a detailed summary of the complete build in the description, in case you don't feel like watching a long-ass video. I don't know why you wouldn't though, because it's awesome. For this video in the series, we are talking about making a build for Varys, the Master of Whisperers for the Iron Throne. Lord Varys is not a lord. He holds no titles and no land. He was in fact born a slave in Lys, originally sold to a mummer show, and eventually resold to a sorcerer in Myr. The sorcerer cut his manhood root and stem and burned it in a brazier as part of a blood magic ritual. He casted Varys out into the street, and when Varys asked what he should do, the sorcerer replied, "Well, I suppose you should die." Varys then vowed to live, and understandably holds a hatred for all things magical. This tells us two things about Varys right away. First, he is a survivor. His life is worth more to him than those among the Game of Thrones universe who would happily die for lord, king, country, or oath. Secondly, he despises all things magical, which is why I have decided on Breton for this build. Why Breton? Well, despite their natural magical skill bonuses, it's their racial ability that we want. Resistance to magic. Call it a symbolic gesture. And call my choice of the Atronach stone a further symbolic gesture. This dude hates magic. He wants no part of it. If the Breton's greater power is activated in conjunction with this stone, he will be fully immune to dragon breath and almost all types of magical attacks for 60 seconds. After decidedly not dying on the streets of Lys, Varys resorted to begging, prostitution, and theft. He soon became recognized as the best thief in the city until an unknown rival forced him out and he fled to Pentos. There, he befriended a sellsword named Illyrio and began training orphans to act as spies and informants. Thieves have great talents, but strength of arms is rarely one of them. This is demonstrated when a man, known as the greatest thief in Lys, is forced out by a rival. In fact, it isn't until the last chapter of the most recent book that he uses a weapon for anything. What thieves do have are sure feet, nimble fingers, a glib tongue, and a penchant for avoiding combat. We will be using Sneak to avoid combat at all costs, using Lockpick to access verboten areas, and Pickpocket to relieve people of their valuables. We'll also use Varys' unique brand of speech to get ourselves out of tight situations. Varys uses a number of disguises to great effect in King's Landing, and so his outfit is not very important. Some robes and soft shoes will do for any occasion, though he has been known to appear in beggar's rags, brown rough-spun, a dungeon turnkey, even dressed as a woman. For maximum role-playing, keep a disguise handy when making a discreet meeting. His story points strongly to starting at the Thieves Guild and doing quests and missions which involve no violence. Before we do that, though, we need to be trained as a mummer. We can fast-track directly to Solitude and do the Bard's College quest. This is actually quite difficult, especially at level 1, but you can sneak around these sleeping Draugr to give yourself a little skill boost. I used a bow as well to fire arrows into walls, which enemies immediately explore, and walked Draugr into some nasty traps. Once you get to the final chamber, just hide somewhere. The Bard's ghost doesn't need your help at all. There's a good reason for doing this literal mummer's farce first. After Varys earns his stripes as a bard, he can come to the college in Solitude to train one of the hardest skills to naturally level, speech. Gerard Germain is the master speech trainer in the game, and if we have the coin to level a skill, this one will pay for itself. Once that's done, we'll have to skip the bit about being castrated and go directly to joining the Thieves Guild. We'll just have to assume that Varys had his dick and balls pulled off by Olaf One-Eye. Getting back to thieving, another thing thieves have is a lot of gold, which they often use to hire swords, like Illyrio, who can do their fighting for them. When combat is necessary, a strong hireling will be our safety net. The closest thing to Illyrio as a sellsword in Skyrim is Janassa. We'll use our proceeds from the mummery to hire her for a one-time fee of 500 gold in the Drunken Huntsman in Whiterun. She is skilled in archery, light armor, one-handed block, and sneak, and will attack anyone you tell her to, even hold guards. Janassa will sneak, but she isn't great at it. When breaking into joints, it's best we tell her to wait outside. After we prove our merit to Brynjolf and Riften, We can do extra jobs for Delvin and Vex, and use our money to train our skills. We now have access to master trainers for each of our main skills, so spend liberally on training. I did extra jobs first and had 70 points into each main skill before I set off doing the main guild quests. Since Varys is bitterly against magic, we should never use anything enchanted. However, I'm of the opinion that the Thieves Guild armor is okay. I submit that the armor is not actually enchanted, since we can't disenchant it. Also, who would do the guild's enchanting, and where? No, it's more likely that it's just light armor designed for stealth and ill gain. Since we are doing our utmost to avoid getting hit, it's unlikely we'll get much in the way of light armor skill. The Thieves Guild story is good for Varys, but not perfect. After the Pursuit mission, it makes no sense to continue. Lord Varys has few scruples, but making a pact with the Daedric Lord is something he would never do. After the Pursuit, we should let Carlia and Brynjolf handle the magical stuff, and stick to bolstering the Thieves Guild to its former glory. Once we've made a name for ourselves as a master thief, what should we do? Well, I'm of two minds about that, and here are some suggestions. Varys goes from serving himself as a thief in Pentos to serving as a master of whisperers under King Aegon of House Targaryen, who uses a dragon as his sigil. The Empire in Skyrim is also already in power, in need of some subterfuge, and also has dragons on everything. The problem is that we'll have to let our sellsword do our fighting while taking keeps, which can result in long, drawn-out battles. Another option is to start using a weapon, which I'll rationalize a little later. Some of the quests are very much the stuff of spies, though, extortion, misinformation, and espionage, and they won't require violence. The second thing we could do, as Varys puts it time and time again, is to serve the realm. He genuinely does look out for the little guy, by making every effort to protect the lives of Ned Stark and his children, by employing knights who have been banished and spiriting away those who need protection, even teaching orphans to read and write, and break into shit, and navigate secret passages in total darkness. There are plenty of commoners in Skyrim who need a little help with something, and many of them are indeed non-violent problems. We can spend our time going to small towns and public places we rarely explore in Skyrim, trying to help the small folk.
You've done us a great service.
I'd thank the gods, but I'll settle for thanking you.
Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting to pick that up.
You've done a great thing for me and my sister.
Better. Thanks, friend. I wouldn't have lasted much longer without that.
Now, there are undoubtedly some of you out there who will be saying something like, play Skyrim without killing anything? Fuck that. And to you I say, you're right. It's not easy to avoid combat in any RPG, and sometimes some people just want for killing.
I work for Bellathor at the General Goods Store.
Yeah, I fucking know. I understand it, you understand it, and understandably, Varys understands it. You don't get to the small council without breaking some eggs. In the very last chapter in the most recent book, Varys uses a crossbow to solve a bit of a problem he has with the current management. If you find that it is just not feasible to go through Skyrim without a weapon, head towards Fort Dawnguard. Once the quest has been forced down your throat, fucking DLC, you can talk to the same orc, Dorak, who is outside doing a little target practice, and he'll give you a crossbow with 50 bolts, no strings attached. You can make more bolts at any forge if you run out. And if you decide you want to go off the rails of the story a little bit, go ahead and side with the Dawnguard to complete the ancient technology quests and gain access to the higher level crossbows. Well, I hope you enjoy playing a pudgy, non-violent eunuch as much as I did. Come around next week and I'll discuss my heavily spoilered and contrived build for a fan favorite, Jake and Hagar. Thanks for watching.